They put her out in the rain like she was nothing. She let them believe it. Behind that door, her husband's family raised their glasses. One deal, they kept saying, would save them from ruin. Not one of them asked who sat on the other side of it. A pregnant woman on a dark porch. A single suitcase. A ring on a chain she never took off. And a question none of them thought to ask: who did they just throw away? You will not drag this family down. Not you. Mama, I'm carrying your grandchild. From where? What do your people even own? More than you'd believe. Then say it, to my face. She could have. One sentence would have ended all of them. She swallowed it. Emeka, are you a man? Handle your wife. Maybe it's easier this way. For now. 4 years of marriage. And he couldn't finish the sentence that ended it. Take your bag. This house has standards. Hand on her belly. She lifted the suitcase herself. No one moved. The door shut behind her, and across the city, a boardroom sat waiting for a chair only she could fill. They spent that night celebrating their rescue. She spent it deciding whether they deserved one, because the deal that saves this family is coming, and it walks in wearing her name. The only thing left to learn is what a woman does with that kind of power over the people who threw her out. Subscribe and stay with me. When she walks into that room, you'll want to be watching. To understand that porch, you have to go back 2 weeks, back to before the door ever closed. Chiamaka Okafor woke before the sun. She always did. The house in Sugarland was big enough to echo. Marble floors, a chandelier nobody looked at anymore. She moved through it quietly, the way you move through a place that has never quite been yours. Every morning she made breakfast for a family that barely thanked her, and every morning, her mother-in-law found something wrong with it. This tea is cold. I'll warm it, Mama. Don't warm it. Make it again, properly. She made it again, properly. 4 years she had lived like this, smiling small, speaking softer, folding herself down to fit a family that never once asked who she really was. They saw a quiet woman from a family they'd never heard of. A woman lucky, they thought, to have married a Nwosu. They never looked closer than that. It never occurred to them that they should. Her husband came down that morning knotting his tie, phone already pressed to his ear. Emeka Nwosu was a handsome man with tired eyes and a spine that bent whichever way his mother leaned. You didn't sleep, she said. The company. It's a rough month. You can talk to me. I know more about business than you think. It's not your world, Chiama. Let me handle it. He kissed her forehead like an afterthought, and he was gone. He had no idea the world he was drowning in was one his wife could have bought twice over. In the front room, Mama Nwosu held court on the phone, loud enough for the whole house to hear. The Nwosus? We are fine. Better than fine. We don't discuss money like poor people. But the bills came to that house too. Chiamaka had seen them. The red stamps. The second notices folded under the good china where Mama thought no one would look. Nwosu and Sons was dying quietly, and the whole family was dressing the corpse in gold. Only one person under that roof ever really saw her. Adaeze was Emeka's younger sister, 26, sharp-eyed, and the single soul in that house with a soft place left in it. You didn't eat again, Adaeze said, sliding a plate across the counter. I'm fine. You're carrying a baby and running this whole house on fine. Sit, please. You're the only one who ever tells me to sit down, because you're the only one in this family who acts like she deserves to. Chiamaka laughed, the first real laugh in days. Adaeze reached out. Can I feel it? Chiamaka took her sister-in-law's hand and laid it against her belly, and for a moment they just sat there. 2 women that family had underestimated, each for her own reasons. That night, passing the study, Chiamaka heard something she was never meant to hear. Mama, alone, on her knees. God, don't let them see. Not the cars, not the house, anything but that. Pride is often just fear in good clothes. Mama Nwosu was terrified. of the morning the neighbors would learn the Nwosus had nothing left, and a frightened person guarding the last of their name will do almost anything to protect it, even throw away the one person holding the family's future in her hands. Because here is what none of them knew. When the house finally emptied, Chiamaka's phone rang. She checked the hallway before she answered, and when she spoke, her voice changed. Steady, certain. The voice of a woman used to being obeyed. "Ebele, tell the board I've read the Nwosu file. And your recommendation stands, Ma? We move on the rescue?" "We move when I say, not before. Forgive me, but they still don't know it's you. Your own husband's company, and he has no idea whose desk it lands on." "No, and keep it that way. May I ask why?" "Because I need to see who this family is when they think I am no one." She ended the call. Upstairs, a door opened. In one breath, she slid the phone away and became small again. She told herself she was only testing them, that the kindness would win in the end, that a good woman, given enough time, could soften even a proud house. She was wrong about the time she had. It fell apart on a Sunday. The Nwosus were a church family. Front pew, loudest amens, first names the pastor always remembered. That Sunday, after service, the aunties gathered in the Nwosu living room the way they always did. Small chops on good plates, gossip dressed as concern, and Mama at the center of it, glowing, because appearances were the only currency she had left. Then one auntie, meaning to be kind, asked the wrong question. "And your daughter-in-law, what is it her family does again?" The room went quiet. Every eye turned to Chiamaka, and Mama, who had spent a lifetime terrified of exactly this question, decided in that instant to answer it with cruelty. "Her family?" Mama laughed, thin and sharp. "We don't ask. You take what your son brings home." The aunties tittered. Chiamaka set down her plate and said nothing. But Adais saw her brother's wife blink hard, once, and look at the floor. Later, when the guests had gone, it should have ended there. It didn't. Because something in Mama had come loose. The fear, maybe, finally boiling over into someone she was allowed to hurt. She found Chiamaka in the kitchen and did not lower her voice. "You embarrassed me today." "I said nothing, Mama. That is the embarrassment. A wife with nothing to say for herself, no family, no name. And now," her eyes dropped to Chiamaka's belly and her lip curled, "now you want to fill this house with children from wherever it is you came from." Emeka stood in the doorway. He heard all of it. He said not one word. Outside, a Gulf storm had come in off the coast, the kind that turns the sky green and the streets to rivers. And inside, the storm found its own shape. "You will not drag this family down, not you." "Mama, I'm carrying your grandchild." "From where? What do your people even own?" And here was the moment. The one Chiamaka would turn over in her mind for weeks after. She could have ended it right there. She could have said the name, Okafor Holdings, and watched the blood leave their faces. She could have told them that the rescue they were praying for sat on her desk, that the roof over their heads was hers to keep or take. One sentence. That was all it would have cost. "More than you'd believe," she said instead. "Then say it, to my face." She swallowed it. All of it. "Emeka, are you a man? Handle your wife." Her husband looked at his shoes. "Maybe it's easier this way. For now." "For now," she repeated softly, as if testing whether the words were real. "Take your bag. This house has standards." So she took her bag. Hand on her belly, she lifted the suitcase herself, because no one in that house would lower themselves to help. And she walked out into the rain. The door shut behind her. Adais ran out after her, barefoot on the wet step, crying, pressing her own phone and what little cash she had into Chiamaka's hands. "Where will you go? Chiama, where will you go?" And Chiamaka, soaked, discarded, 5 months along, looked back at the grand house that had just spit her out. When she spoke, it was not with anger. It was with the terrible calm of someone who has finally seen the truth clearly. "The measure of a family," she said, "is how it treats the one it believes has nothing." She kissed Daisy's forehead, and she walked into the storm. Alone. But a woman is not alone when a car she owns is already turning onto the street. Chiamaka slid into the back seat, out of the rain, and the driver, who called her Ma, not Madam, pulled away from the only house in the city that thought she was poor. The next morning, in a glass tower downtown, a boardroom stood when she entered. Not because she asked them to, because that is what a room does when the chair walks in. This was the other world, the one she had kept in a locked drawer for 4 years, the daughter of a man who had built an empire out of nothing but nerve, and who had left it, all of it, to the one child he trusted to run it with a conscience. Here, no one told Chiamaka Okafor to make the tea again. Here, when she spoke, 12 executives wrote it down. "The Nwosu file," she said. "Where are we?" Ebele, her chief operating officer and her late father's oldest friend, slid the folder across the table. "Failing faster than they'll admit. Debt stacked on debt. Without our capital, they close inside a month. 400 jobs gone with them." 400 jobs. Chiamaka's eyes did not leave the page. "And the family?" Ebele hesitated. "Ma, you know I have to ask. You walked in here soaked last night. You are 5 months pregnant, sleeping in a company apartment, and the man who let them put you out is the same man begging us for a lifeline. Say the word, and there is no rescue. We let Nwosu and sons die. It would be understandable." For a long moment she said nothing. Outside the glass, Houston shimmered in the heat. To understand why she hesitated, why she didn't simply let them fall, you have to know how it began. 6 years earlier, she was not the chair of anything anyone could see. She was a woman at a friend's wedding in a plain blue dress, deliberately unremarkable, watching a nervous young man fumble a toast and win the whole room with his laugh anyway. "You're the only person here not trying to impress anybody," Emeka told her later by the drinks. "Maybe I've got nothing to impress you with," she said. "Good," he grinned. "Then I'll like you for the right reasons." She had heard every line. She had been chased by men who smelled the money before they ever saw her face, so she made a choice that night, a choice that felt like wisdom and would later feel like a trap. She would not tell him what she was worth. She would let herself be loved as a woman with nothing, because if he loved her poor, he would love her true. He did love her. That part was real. But love that has never been tested by the truth is just a story two people agree to tell. And by the time she understood that, the silence had hardened into a wall she no longer knew how to climb. "I hesitate," she finally told Ebele, "because 400 families did nothing to me, and because my child will one day ask what kind of woman his mother was. I won't answer that with revenge." "Then what do we do?" "We wait," she said. "Let them come to us. Let them beg the very hands they think are empty. And when the truth comes out, and it will, it comes out on its own terms, not mine." Across the city, the other world was cracking. Nwosu and sons had one last hope, and Emeka clung to it like a drowning man. A holding company. A quiet giant that bought failing firms and made them live again. His people had been negotiating for weeks with a COO named Ebele, a hard, fair woman who gave nothing away. "Who owns them?" Emeka asked his accountant. "Who actually signs the check?" "Private," the man shrugged. "Some chairman who never shows a face. They say if the chair agrees to meet you in person, the deal is as good as done." Emeka should have felt relief. Instead, some nights, he stood in the doorway of the guest room where a plain blue dress still hung in the closet, and he felt something he could not name. His mother called it moving on. His sister called it what it was. "You threw out your pregnant wife in a storm," Adeze told him, "and you can't even look at her side of the closet. That's not moving on, Emeka. That's a man avoiding a mirror." He did answer her. The Nwosus did what desperate families do when they smell rescue. They celebrated early. Mama planned a Thanksgiving service, the whole church invited, to praise God for the deal that would restore the family name. Nwosu Ibi, a hired photographer, a banquet the family could not afford, charged against money it did not yet have. When the papers are signed, Mama announced from the front of the hall, resplendent, the Nwosus will be exactly who we have always been. People forget, she added, to knowing laughter. We were never the ones who needed help. In the third row, Adaze sat with her hands folded and her jaw tight. She alone knew the shape of the lie. She had watched them put a good woman out in the rain, and now she watched them thank God for a fortune with that same woman's face on it. She said nothing, but she took out her phone and she typed a single message to a number the family did not have. They're throwing a party, Adaze wrote, to celebrate the deal. Chiama. I think you should know. I think you should be there when they find out. Miles away in a quiet apartment, Chiamaka read it twice. Then she set the phone down and pressed a hand to her belly, where the baby had begun lately to move. The truth was, the deciding had been quietly tearing her in half. She had spent 4 years making herself smaller so a frightened family could feel large. She was finished. Ebele, she said on the phone that night, the 400 workers are innocent. Protect every one of them, whatever it costs. But the family gets nothing from my hand, no rescue, no shield. And after they live with what they built, I am done holding up a house that was always going to fall, and calling it love. You know this ends them. No, what they did to me ends them. I am only going to stop being the reason it never caught up. She paused. Set the signing. Tell the Nwosus the chair has agreed to attend in person, and Ebele, don't tell them the name. Across town, Emeka got the call every dying company prays for. The chair would come. The deal was real. The family was saved. He should have been overjoyed. Instead, he drove, without deciding to, past a certain apartment building where he'd heard, through a daze, through silence, through the gaps in his own denial, that his wife was staying. He sat outside in the dark for an hour. He did not go in. He didn't know what he would even say. He would have to say it soon. He just didn't know the room he'd have to say it in. The signing was held on the 40th floor of a tower the Nwosus had only ever seen from the freeway. They arrived like royalty restored. Mama in her finest, Emeka in a new suit, the accountant clutching a folder of hope. They were shown to a boardroom of glass and light, a long table, and one tall chair at the head that sat conspicuously, deliberately, empty. Where is the chair? Mama asked, smoothing her wrapper. One does not keep the Nwosus waiting. The chair is on the way, Ebele said mildly. The chair is very familiar with your family. The doors opened, and Chiamaka Okafor walked into the room. For one full second, no one moved. The mind refuses at first, a thing it cannot fit. Mama's smile stayed frozen on her face, even as the blood drained out beneath it. Emeka rose halfway from his chair and stopped there, caught between standing and falling. The accountant looked from the pregnant woman in the doorway to the brass nameplate on the table, Chair Okafor Holdings, and understood before either of them did. She wore no triumph. That was the terrible part. She simply crossed to the head of the table, and at her collarbone, on its thin chain, her father's signet ring caught the light. The same ring she had worn every day in their house while they called her nobody. Please, she said quietly. Sit. They sat. The most powerful woman in the room was the one they had put out in the rain. You? Mama's voice cracked. You lied to us. All this time? No, Mama. Chiamaka's tone did not rise. It never once rose. I let you believe what you wanted to believe. There is a difference. You never asked me a single true question in 4 years. You did not want the answer. You wanted a servant with a face you could look down on. She opened the folder in front of her. Nwosu and Sons owes more than it can ever repay. In 1 month it closes. 400 people lose their jobs. Your name, The name you have been so frightened of losing was already gone. I am the only reason anyone in this city still says it with respect." Emeka finally spoke, and his voice was the voice of a boy. "Chiama, I didn't know. That was the whole problem, Emeka." She looked at him, and for the first time something in her face gave way. Not anger, but a grief so old it had gone quiet. "You didn't know me. You chose not to. It was easier to let your mother name me than to defend the woman carrying your child. You said it yourself. Easier. For now." She let the room hold its own silence. "Here is what I have learned," she said, and now she was speaking to all of them, to the aunties who weren't there, to the whole frightened world that had raised a woman like Mama. The measure of a family is not its house or its cars or the amens it can afford on a Sunday. The measure of a family is how it treats the one it believes has nothing, and by that measure, she closed the folder. "You have been bankrupt far longer than the company." Mama Nwosu, who had spent a lifetime performing strength, put her face in her hands and wept. Somewhere beneath the pride there had always been a frightened woman. But fear is a reason, not an excuse. And she was about to learn the difference between the two. Everyone in that room was waiting for the same thing, the soft ending. The wronged woman who forgives, who rescues, who proves her goodness by handing her abusers back the very life they denied her. The world loves that story. It had trained the Nwosus to expect it. Chiamaka Okafor was done being that story. She did not raise her voice. She never had to. She simply read out what would happen, the way a judge reads a verdict. 400 people work for Nwosu and Sons, she said. They did nothing to me, so I am protecting all of them. She slid a single document across the table. As of this morning, Okafor Holdings does not rescue Nwosu and Sons. It owns it. The debt was mine to buy. I bought it. Every worker keeps their job. Every worker now answers to me. The accountant understood first and went gray. A rescue would have left the family in control. This was not a rescue. This was an ending. You are removed from the board, she told Emeka, flat and final. All of you. The company will keep the Nwosu name a little longer, but not one Nwosu will ever again decide anything inside it. Mama found her voice, thin and shaking. And the house. Emeka, the house. The bank has owned your house for a year, Mama. You have been serving small chops to your aunties in rooms you did not own, terrified every single day that they would find out. Chiamaka let it land. I was going to quietly protect you from that. I changed my mind. By Friday they will know. Every auntie, every front pew face whose opinion you were so frightened of. They are going to know exactly what the Nwosus have, which is nothing. It was the precise fear Mama had carried on her knees at night. And Chiamaka, who had once been humiliated with the words, "What do your people even own?" handed that same question back to the woman who asked it, and let the whole world answer it out loud. There was no cruelty in her voice. That was what made it unbearable. She was simply no longer willing to spend one more ounce of herself protecting people who had spent her like she was nothing. Emeka broke. He came around the table, reaching for her hands. Chiama, please, the baby, us. Tell me there's something left. Tell me what to do. She looked at him a long moment. She thought of the plain blue dress. She thought of a doorway, and a man who studied his shoes while his mother put his pregnant wife out into a storm. There's nothing to do, Emeka. That's the part you have to live with now. Her voice did not shake. You had a wife who gave up everything for you. 4 years of it, just to see if you would ever choose her. And you let your mother call me a nobody, and you agreed. You don't get to unfinish that sentence tonight. And my child? Your child will know exactly who you are. I won't lie to protect you, and I won't poison them to punish you. I will tell them the truth, and let them decide what you are worth. The same courtesy no one in this family ever gave me. She stepped back, out of his reach. That is the only mercy left in this room. Don't mistake it for a door. She turned to go. And then she stopped at one person, because justice without kindness is only a colder cruelty, and she had promised herself she would never confuse the two the way they had. Adais, by the wall, weeping, the only one who had run out into the rain after her. "You reached for me when it cost you something," Chiamaka said softly. "Come with me. There's a place for you at a company full of people who actually see each other. And there is an ant-shaped space in my son's life that belongs to you and to no one else in this room." Two women walked out of that boardroom. Behind them, a family sat in the wreckage of a name they had spent everything to protect, and lost the moment they decided a quiet woman was beneath them. Word travels fast in a proud community. By the next Sunday, the front pew sat empty. The jewel and the gold were gone. Mama Nwosu, who had built her entire self out of what other people thought, was left to live inside what they now knew. Emeka took work far from anyone who had ever seen the family stand tall, and spent his evenings staring at a phone that would never ring the way he wanted. They did not starve, but every single day they woke inside the small, honest truth they had burned a good woman to escape. That was the sentence. Not poverty, consequence. The measure of a family is how it treats the one it believes has nothing. By that measure, the Nwosus had been bankrupt long before the money ran out. And in the end, the whole world got to read the books. She did not destroy them out of hatred. She simply stopped setting herself on fire to keep them warm. There is a difference. And every woman who has ever been told to make herself smaller knows exactly what it is. Months later, in a bright home that was entirely her own, Chiamaka held her newborn son up to the window light. Downstairs, Adais was laughing in the kitchen. The signet ring caught the sun. "You will always know exactly who you are," she whispered to him. "So no one will ever get to decide it for you. If this story reached you, someone in your life needs it too. Send it to them. Subscribe and stay close, because the world keeps underestimating the wrong woman. And I have more stories about what happens when she finally stops letting it.